Izuku was already on his feet, moving automatically. Bakugo matched his pace without looking, shoulders brushing once as they filed out. The purple-haired boy chuckled as he stood, eyes glinting. Sounds fun. Izuku's stomach twisted again. Aizawa watched them leave, eyes half-lidded, expression unreadable. He waited until the room was empty before turning and walking out himself. Orientation. He scoffed internally. Every year, it was the same thing. Speeches about legacy and responsibility, smiling pro-heroes talking about teamwork and dreams like villains cared about any of that. Like the real world waited politely while you finished your welcome ceremony. It was a waste of time. If these kids were going to be heroes, they needed to understand one thing immediately. Yue wasn't here to coddle them. Ground beta loomed ahead, concrete skeletons baking under the sun. Aizawa took his place at the center, scarf loose, capture weapon ready not as a threat, but as a reminder. When the class began to arrive, breathless and half-dressed in their blue and white uniforms, he watched them carefully. Some were excited. Some were nervous. Two of them scanned the terrain first, eyes sharp, already planning routes. Aizawa's gaze slid briefly to Bakugo and Midoriya. Good, he thought. You're already ahead. Line up, he ordered. They scrambled to obey. Aizawa looked at the assembled class, at the potential and arrogance and fear standing in front of him. This is your orientation, he said flatly. The wind swept through the empty structures, carrying his words across the broken concrete. Welcome to UA. Ground beta echoed with restless energy. The class lined up unevenly, gym uniforms stark against the gray concrete. Some students bounced on their heels, others stood stiff as boards, eyes darting between the ruined buildings and their teacher. Aizawa watched all of it with the same tired focus he used on patrol, cataloging tells, habits, weaknesses. This is a hand-to-hand assessment, he said. No quirks. Groans rippled through the group. Bakugo clicked his tongue. Izuku didn't react at all, just adjusted his stance, feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced. Neither of them needed this. Aizawa knew that. But he wanted to know something else. Did you keep training, he wondered, or did you relax once you got in? His gaze swept the line. It passed over Bakugo's coiled impatience, Izuku's quiet readiness, and stopped on a much smaller student near the end. Minoru Mainta. The boy stood hunched, hands clasped behind his head, eyes very obviously not where they should be. They tracked movement, not threats, not terrain, but classmates. Aizawa followed the line of sight once and felt irritation settle deep and heavy in his chest. Fantastic, he thought. One of those. Mainta, Aizawa said. The boy startled. Me. Yes, you're first. A few students snickered. Mainta puffed up slightly, trying to look confident. Oh, sure thing, sensei. Just so you know, I'm more of a long-range specialist. Hand to hand, Aizawa repeated. No quirks. Mainta's bravado deflated instantly. W8 what? Aizawa didn't wait for agreement. He stepped forward, scarf trailing loosely behind him, posture relaxed in a way that made experienced fighters uneasy. Izuku felt it immediately. His shoulders tensed, not the sharp alarm he'd felt earlier, but a quieter one. This is going to be bad, his instincts warned. Bakugo leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowed. Idiot, he muttered under his breath. He didn't specify who. Mainta shuffled into position, fists raised incorrectly, feet too close together. He was smiling nervously, eyes flicking around like he expected someone to stop this. Aizawa sighed. This won't take long, he said. He moved. Mainta never saw it coming. One step, a shift of weight. Aizawa's hand came down, not hard, just precise, hooking Mainta's wrist and twisting it enough to unbalance him. A foot behind Mainta's ankle, a push at the shoulder, and suddenly the boy was on the ground, face inches from concrete. It took less than 2 seconds. Mainta squeaked. Aizawa knelt beside him, voice low but carrying. First lesson, If you're going to look at people like prey, you'd better be prepared to be prey. The class went dead silent. Aizawa released him and stood. Minta scrambled back, red-faced and shaken, clutching his wrist like it had been shattered, even though Aizawa had been careful not to actually injure him. Second lesson, Aizawa continued, eyes cold. Your quirk will not save you if you don't respect the people around you. Heroes who don't understand that die early, or worse. He turned away, dismissing Minta without another glance. Sit out. Minta didn't argue. Aizawa faced the class again. Anyone else think this is a joke? No one spoke. Aizawa's gaze drifted, settling briefly on Bakugo and Izuku. They hadn't moved. Bakugo's posture was sharp, alert, clearly evaluating Aizawa's technique. Izuku's eyes were tracking angles, replaying the takedown in his head, already learning from it. Good, Aizawa thought. This wasn't just about testing strength. It was about teaching them what kind of fighters they needed to be. And which ones wouldn't last. Ground Beta was quieter now. Not because the class was calm, but because they were spent asterisk. Aizawa stood at the center of the field, scarf dragging faint lines through dust and gravel. 13 students had already faced him. 13 quick lessons delivered with bruises, embarrassment, and hard-earned respect. Most of them hadn't lasted a minute. Some had promise, good instincts, decent footwork. A few even managed to force him to move instead of ending things immediately. He cataloged them mentally, already adjusting future lesson plans. Then his eyes landed on Midoriya Izuku. The boy stepped forward without being called. That alone made Aizawa narrow his eyes. Midoriya rolled his shoulders once, slow and deliberate, like he was settling into a familiar weight. No nervous twitching, no visible fear. His breathing was steady, too steady for someone about to fight a pro hero. Bakugo watched from the line, arms crossed, expression sharp. Too sharp, like someone watching a knife test its edge. Aizawa straightened. Midoriya, he said. Same rules, no quirks. Izuku nodded. Yes, sir. They took their positions. Aizawa activated erasure. The gold under Izuku's skin vanished instantly, but unlike the others, Izuku didn't flinch when it happened. He didn't even look surprised. That was the first warning. Aizawa moved to finish it quickly. That was his mistake. Izuku vanished asterisk. Not literally, but the boy dropped low and accelerated forward in a burst of speed that had no business coming from a quirkless 15-year-old. Aizawa adjusted mid-step, capture scarf snapping out. Izuku slid beneath it. Too fast, Aizawa registered. He pivoted, sweeping low, aiming to take Izuku's legs out. Izuku jumped, but not back. He jumped asterisk in asterisk. Aizawa felt the rush of displaced air as Izuku passed within inches of him, close enough that Aizawa caught the faint scent of dust and fabric. Izuku landed behind him and moved again before Aizawa fully turned. He's not trying to win, Aizawa realized. He's trying to last. No, worse. He's trying to learn asterisk. Aizawa pressed harder. Strikes came faster now, more aggressive. This wasn't a demonstration anymore. This was suppression, the kind meant to overwhelm and end fights quickly. Izuku adapted anyway. He used broken concrete to change elevation, forced Aizawa to reposition, baited attacks just to see how Aizawa responded. Every exchange sharpened his movements, cut away hesitation. And then, Izuku reached down, scooped a handful of loose debris, and threw it. Dust exploded upward in a blinding cloud. Aizawa swore and recoiled instinctively, goggles snapping shut a fraction too late. His vision blurred. He knows, Aizawa thought sharply. He knows I need to see. That wasn't something you figured out by accident. That was experience, observation. Someone who had studied him asterisk really studied him. The first time, Aizawa recovered quickly, kicking backward and forcing distance. Izuku retreated immediately, not pressing the advantage. A test run, Aizawa realized. The second time came faster. Dust again, but this time paired with movement. Izuku didn't just blind him. He changed angles, footsteps deliberately misleading, breath controlled to avoid sound. Aizawa's heart kicked hard against his ribs. This was dangerous. Not because Izuku was out of control. Because he was. Aizawa lashed out, scarf snapping wide in a defensive arc, forcing space until his vision cleared. When it did, Izuku was already several meters away, stance reset, eyes sharp and calculating. The timer chimed. Silence fell over ground beta. Aizawa stood still for a long moment. Fear settled into his chest. Not panic, not weakness. Recognition. In all his years teaching, through prodigies, monsters, walking disasters, no student had ever made him adjust this much this fast. Midoriya Izuku wasn't just strong. He was predatory in the way survivors were. Aizawa turned his head slowly. Bakugo Katsuki stood there, eyes burning with excitement, a grin pulling at his mouth like he was watching something beautiful and inevitable. If Midoriya is this dangerous, Aizawa thought grimly, then what did I create by letting Bakugo train with him for years? He exhaled through his nose. This wasn't a class anymore. It was containment. And Aizawa Shouta had just realized something deeply unsettling. UA hadn't admitted one monster. It had admitted two. And they'd grown up together. Bakugo Katsuki stepped forward before Aizawa could call his name. Of course he did. Where Midoriya had moved like a planner, testing, adapting, dissecting, Bakugo moved like a storm that had already decided the outcome. He rolled his neck once, sharp crack audible even from where he stood, eyes locked onto Aizawa with feral focus. No grin, no taunting. That was the second warning. Same rules, Aizawa said, already lifting his goggles. No quirks. Bakugo snorted, didn't plan on it. Erasure activated. Nothing flared, nothing resisted. Bakugo didn't even acknowledge the loss of his quirk, because he hadn't been relying on it in the first place. The moment, Aizawa shifted his weight. Bakugo attacked. There was no opening move, no probing strike, no hesitation. He closed distance with brutal efficiency, feet pounding against concrete in a rhythm too fast, too controlled for a teenager. Aizawa barely had time to bring his guard up before Bakugo's fist slammed toward his ribs, forcing him to twist away at the last second. Too slow. Bakugo adjusted instantly, following through with a knee, then an elbow, then a sharp pivot that cut off Aizawa's retreat like he'd already mapped the space. He's not giving me time to think, Aizawa realized. This wasn't recklessness. This was pressure. Bakugo didn't pause between strikes, didn't overextend, didn't chase wildly. Every attack flowed into the next, angles tight, movements sharp, like Midoriya's patterns stripped of restraint and driven forward by pure aggression. Aizawa snapped his capture scarf out on instinct. Bakugo ducked under it. Not because he reacted late, but because he'd expected it. He drove forward again, shoulder-checking Aizawa hard enough to force him back several steps. Concrete scraped under Aizawa's boots as he barely recovered his footing. Bakugo was already there. Again. And again. Aizawa felt it then, that rare cold sensation crawling up his spine. This kid will not let me breathe. Bakugo fought like someone who understood one rule above all others. If you give your opponent space, they'll use it to kill you. There was no wasted motion, no dramatic wind-ups. Every strike was compact, devastating, meant to overwhelm and end things fast. Where Midoriya dismantled opponents by thinking faster than they could react, Bakugo destroyed them by never letting them react at all. Aizawa tried to disengage. Bakugo didn't allow it. He mirrored Aizawa's movements almost perfectly, same footwork, same shifts in balance, but more aggressive, more forceful, like watching Aizawa's own style reflected through a cracked mirror.